Joe Miles is here today. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing wonderful. Glad to be back, my friend. How's everything in your world?
Well, I'm just trying to get things set up and get a bunch of these stands prepped. Obviously I'm way ahead of where I was last year, but it's hot down here, as you well know.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. That is for sure. It is what about averaging about 98 with about 70-80% humidity.
Yeah, I'd say the two of the last three times I was out there, it rained, in the middle of the day for about 45 minutes, which rain doesn't cool anything off down here in South Carolina. It just makes it hotter.
More humid, more humid, and more humid.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, it's crazy, but things are going good. I've been trying to get stuff kind of wrapped up, and just a couple of things that we looked at. I had one thought that I thought was going to be a saddle stand that ends up being a lock on, and so I had to order a couple things. But my biggest issue is I got pigs, which I got a hog issue.
Yeah, did they get rid of them?
The guy that was supposed to come in to get rid of them, his truck broke down the day before he was supposed to come in, and so I don't know. I haven't put bait out on any of those other sites because I didn't want to bring them in, everywhere. But man, I put bait out on that one site that first night. I had 10 of them in there. I'm literally thinking about just going in there. I don't have a night vision, so I may just have to go in there with something that's got a light on it, or get up in the stand and wait for them to come in at dusk and just shoot them with a bow.
Yeah, I mean that's great target practice, and you're not going to get any deer to come to that feed if the hogs take it over. I mean, they may come in there at night and piddle around once the hogs leave, or sometimes they'll come in, a little bit before prime time, but it'd be tough to get a good buck in there once those hogs figure out that's there, especially those young ones. The pictures I saw, it looked like a lot of young hogs, and those things will be bedded up right there beside it, and basically here you pour it out and they'll be right in on top of it. They're bad.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I got to get a plan in place to get rid of those suckers, because I had some nice bucks showing up over the summer, and I haven't got anything on camera since those hogs showed up.
Yeah, bad news, man. But hey, bow hunting, it'll give you an opportunity to shoot some more stuff, and that can always be fun and definitely helpful in testing out all your system.
That's right. So speaking of systems, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of Asio. I know that there's some new product out there this season that everybody's pretty excited about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so first off, we're going to have tall sizes this year. So for the taller, longer arm, longer torso guys, we will be offering talls in all of our tops and all of our bottoms. We're also going to be offering smalls in everything. So some of the ladies out there that have been waiting patiently, we're going to have some smalls that will fit them a lot better. And then as far as product line, we're adding a whitetail puffy jacket, which is an insulation piece. It's got 90 grams of Primaloft gold insulation, and it's got a silent shell on the outside. Most puffies are real noisy, but we've developed an outer fabric that's very, very quiet and still is able to keep the loft of the Primaloft gold insulation.
I'm sure people are pretty excited about that one, right? I mean, everyone's kind of got a puffy now, but like you said, all the puffies that the Western companies run, they're all kind of noisy.
Yeah. So that took quite a bit of effort, but it'll be really good because you can put it like under our Sherpa jacket, or even as a standalone piece when it first starts to cool off, and just gives you that added insulation. And it's a piece you can just throw down in your pack. It's very packable, so you can throw it down in your pack and you always got it. If you do get cold, you can put it under just about anything.
What if you were running that by itself? What temperature range would that run in? Do you think is that when it comes, like if you compare that to the midweight hoodie? Are you in the same range?
I would wear it over that midweight hoodie. I would have the midweight. I'd have like a performance shirt or a base layer on the midweight hoodie, and then run that over the top of it. And I could run that in the 40s very easily.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was wondering, because there's kind of a middle ground there that I think that really fills, where it was like the midweight hoodie, I didn't quite have enough. Like it was a little cold when I got to a certain level, but I didn't want to put on something heavy, like that late season jacket. So I think this fills a really nice gap.
Yeah, you can run I tested it quite a bit. I do heavy base layer, our midweight pant, heavy base layer top, midweight hoodie, and our vest, our core warmth vest. And I could get that down to about freezing, that 35-ish in light wind. And then after that, I would have to move up to our Sherpa line. So yeah. I agree. I agree that the hoodie, the puffy jacket will be a great kind of bridge piece between going from kind of mid-season to late season, and even a insulated piece to go under your late season stuff for bitter cold.
Yeah, that vest is I know a lot of people, I don't think many people understand like what a vest can do for you. And I honestly, until last season, I was never really a vest guy, but man, that thing, it does so much in terms of being able to, like, there was tons of times where I would just run the lightweight hoodie with a vest when it was kind of transition. I'd run the midweight hoodie with a vest. The vest kept me out of having to get into a heavier jacket for, I felt like, almost a month.
Yeah, and a lot of guys don't realize it, and to others it's going to sound like common sense, but a lot of the issues people have with their feet and hands getting cold, it's because they don't have their core. They don't have their core warm.
Yep.
And if you keep your core good and warm with a vest and good layers, then the blood is able to stay in your extremities. But as soon as your core starts to get cold, your body just naturally pulls the blood from your extremities to keep your core warm. So that is another place that vest really comes into play.
Science, man. Science.
Yeah, science. I'm a rocket scientist according to my father. So
and then you did a late season full hoodie and a leafy jacket this year too, right?
So we've got a late season full zip hoodie. This windproof. It's got some Sherpa insulation in it. And it has the hood. It's got a built-in face mask, and it is full zip, 2 hand pockets. It's got a safety harness, pull-through slit, and then it has a Napoleon pocket and a rangefinder pocket. So it's got lots of pockets, and it's just like it's almost like our Sherpa jacket, but it's a full zip hoodie where our Sherpa jacket doesn't have a hood. So guys that love hoods, this will be a great piece for them. And then, the leafy jacket. I actually went to a trade show this weekend we were in Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and had the
dude. That was right by my stomping grounds. I grew up 30 minutes from there.
Really?
Yeah, right outside of Grand Rapids, Hudsonville.
Jenison, that's where I flew. That's where I flew into. I flew into
GR. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's a nice little airport, man. I like that airport.
That's a pretty town. Good.
It was easy in and out, but so we were at the fair, I guess the expo area over there in Kalamazoo, and I took the leafy and the puffy jacket prototypes, and guys were in love with the leafy. They just because it's so quiet. A lot of the leafies, again, us being whitetail hunters and close range hunting, you got to have everything super quiet. So the leafy, we spent a lot of time getting the right fabrics and the right cutouts for the 3-dimensional pieces, and it's very, very quiet. So that seemed to be a big hit at the show.
Was that when you put that together? Was that mostly to kind of fill the gap for people that are doing a lot of ground hunting, or what was the thought process behind adding that to the the line?
We've got a ton of guys because the pattern has been recognized as one of the best tree stand patterns in the industry. So a lot of the traditional bow hunting guys have kind of gravitated over to Asio, and because they're shooting 8, 10, 12 yards, and so just it was a natural fit. We had a lot of requests for it. Hey, we'd love to get a 3D leafy jacket in the Asio camo. So because that's kind of our game, bow hunting, and now that so many of the traditional guys are using it, that it just made sense for us to do that. And so that's something we added, and I think it is going to be really, really popular.
That's sweet. And then I think the last thing is you got a fingerless merino glove, right, that got added to the line.
Yeah, and it can be used. It can be a standalone, or you could layer it underneath or even over the top of our midweight gloves if you needed some extra insulation or extra warmth. So, the fingerless gloves, again, we kind of let the customers dictate which way we go. And we got a ton of requests for fingerless glove, and guys seem to really like the merino wool. So we put some together, and they're in kind of our dark gray. We didn't do them in camo. We did them in a dark gray because guys wanted some solid stuff. So Yeah, all of those products, the gloves, the late season hoodie, the leafy jacket, and the puffy, they will all be they're actually on sale on our site. Everything is 30% off right now, and that stuff will start shipping out here in about 20 to 30 days.
That's awesome. Good stuff. Well, the line seems like it's doing awesome. I mean, from what I can see on social media and all the stuff you're doing, it looks like it's just blowing up.
It is, I don't remember. I looked at the report on Monday, but it is up quite a bit from last year. And, we're getting, there's a buzz. I went to our last trade show in Birmingham, Alabama, and then this one in Kalamazoo. And there is starting to be a buzz for Asio, and guys are starting to pick it up. And I think we're finally getting that organic reach that we've been looking for. The first couple of years, it was all about advertising, getting it out there for guys to see it and know about Asio. And now we've got not a critical mass, but we've got certainly a following of people that have Asio and are using it and are happy with it. And now their friends are starting to see it and get it. So it is starting to catch fire. And man, we're super humbled and appreciative, because it is a saturated market and a tough one to get market share in, but it's been a lot of fun and a heck of a lot of work, and it looks like it's starting to finally pay off.
Yeah, well, I think this is just my opinion from a consumer standpoint, looking from the outside in, but also I think a lot of the people that you have associated with a brand, guys that are that we all know are really, really good whitetail hunters, right? Guys like Rendell Eric, Andy May, Adam Hayes, like all these guys that have decided, that this is what they're going to use. They're talking about it on social media. I think that speaks a lot to the credibility of it, because those guys would not be wearing something they didn't believe in, and those guys are killers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those guys you mentioned, Don Higgins, Andre DeQuisto, Lone Wolf Custom Gear,
Yep.
The Whitetail Addiction guys. Yeah, all those guys. And man, it's funny, you always, or not always, but you think, hey, I'll just call up a group or a guy and sponsor him to wear our stuff. Man, those guys, I mean, they get their doors pounded down.
Yep.
For people to, whatever it takes to get them to use their gear. And they are very finicky and they have to pretty much approve it the year before that they like it and want to use it before they'll ever even entertain the idea of doing any kind of partnership. So again, humbled that we're teamed up with those guys, and very, very appreciative that they are repping the gear for sure.
Yeah, you're right too, because we're going through that with Rucklist right now. Just talking to a lot of guys that we're going to have. You're one of them, right? That we're hoping to have the beta in the next week or two, and then we want to get it out there to people. It's not going to be sold yet, but we want to get it out to people like you, people who are going to use it a lot and get feedback on it, and get people to use it and believe in it, so that then we can have conversations with them about whether they'd actually be a part of the program. So I know we're a few years behind you, but the things you guys have done are amazing with the brand. This section of the podcast is brought to you by Asio Gear. With its one-of-a-kind raptor camo pattern, Asio blends seamlessly into the whitetail woods. Its features and technology are designed specifically for the unique needs of bow hunters. I ran Asio this past season, and from the 100-degree temperatures of the South Carolina swamps to the teens of the Illinois rut, Asio has a system that covers you in every temperature. With 30 years of bow hunting experience, Asio is backed by a lifetime guarantee. Use the code DONOTGO20 for 20% off the entire Asio catalog. Find them at AsioGear.com.
In the swamp this year to chase, so excited about that. And then I've got a couple cameras out in Kentucky. I've got a couple cameras out in Ohio. Don't have anything out yet in Kansas. Was supposed to go and do that this past weekend. I was going to leave the Kalamazoo show and be in Kansas Monday and today. And that trip ended up getting kind of derailed with some new regulation out there in Kansas. So waiting on that to come around and see what the deal is there. So that's it, man, is right now, early season, I'll be hunting South Carolina, maybe Kentucky, and then Alberta. So South Carolina, I'll be focusing on a lot of food sources early, and then, trying to play chess instead of checkers. So I'm caught up come rut. I'll try and have cameras in all my rut funnels or potential rut funnels by the opener, August 15th here in South Carolina. And that means Kansas, Ohio, and Kentucky already have those cameras set up, so that as soon as early season is over, I'll be ready to jump right into the rut. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. Going to be hanging a few rut stands now. I don't really hang my early season stuff until I get, a pattern on a deer and I know he's there, and then I can kind of move in that day that I'm going to hunt him. So again, if it was a smaller tract of property, I would have 2 or 3 spots. Hey, these are the only 2 or 3 spots that I can kill him. So I'd go ahead and hang stands early season even. But with it being, 3,500 acres of swamp country, it's kind of pointless to try and hang early season sets until you get a real good plan and get a pattern in place.
And when you're talking about hunting early season food sources, and in the area that you're hunting, what are those food sources that you're targeting as you kind of are looking for these guys?
Yeah, so the sawtooth oaks will start dropping in August, and as you know, our season comes in August 15th, so they'll start dropping towards the end of August. But a lot of muscadines, a lot of greenbrier on the edge of these cutovers. We do on the hill of the swamp. We've got some soybeans and corn planted up there that a guy that farms the top of the hill. He's got beans, so I know there's some bucks that are leaving this property at night and going up to feed in those beans. So that's a good opportunity there with that ag being so close. And then there are a couple of food plots that they put in these on these properties. There's some deer feeders going as well. Some of those deer will get on those feeders, or at least get on them at night, and you can kind of figure out where they're coming from. So that's all the food that we look at. The persimmons don't drop until later. But if you can find those fresh muscadines, man, that can be deadly, deadly, deadly early. And it's just a matter of having boots on the ground and finding them.
So do you have any hog problems over where you're at? I know you mentioned them, but if you're not putting out bait, then you're probably dealing with it a lot less, right? They're just kind of cruising around.
Yeah, and I will run some corn, man. I try, because it's so hard to locate them. I will, put out some cameras in some areas and put out a little bit of corn just to see if I can, get a buck to even come through at night. But within 3 days, the hogs have found it and it's over. So it's almost impossible to bait them, to actually bait a deer into a corn pile where he comes in, like every single evening, because within 2 or 3 days, there's so many hogs in that concrete swamp that they tear them up.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. That area that I'm hunting is a swampy area, which you know as well. And when I got that area, I've asked you a lot of questions. I bugged you a bunch about it. I went on and I started searching for podcasts like whitetail hunting in swamps. I started looking because I wanted to hear as much as I could about it. And I literally could only find 3 or 4 podcasts where they talked about hunting swamps. So I'd like to narrow down on that a little bit and just talk about the unique things when it comes to hunting swamps, and just start with, what do you think's different about, just from a strategic standpoint, when you are looking at a property that is a swamp area versus something that's not? How is that different in terms of the way that you would start to look at that property?
Yeah, so it makes it difficult. If you look at hill country, or even some of the big ag country, rolling hill country, it makes it really tough to find funnels. So you have to, maybe you look at oxbows and if you are going to find funnels, like I'm actually filming a whole session tomorrow on a funnel in the swamp, and it's a fenced in duck pond that the deer funnel around the end of it, and that's a one-sided funnel. And how do you make it into a two-sided funnel? And we're going to get into that. But I guess the point being, the difference in like swamp country and we'll say hill country, the thermals are way different. Like the thermals will follow the sun. So in the mornings, they'll rise, but they'll go to the east as it rises, because it starts to warm up, and they'll kind of follow that sun. And in the evenings, the thermals will start to set. And if there's no topography, they're going to go west because they'll follow the sun. Now, if you've got waterways, and I don't want to get way off tangent here, but if you've got waterways and you've got some fall in the land, then the thermals will override the sun's direction, and they're going to go like water will go down a hill. So that's a real challenge in swamp country. You don't get the swirling winds. You don't get a ton of that. You will if you're in a big cutover and the wind's coming across the cutover and then it hits tall timber. You can get some swirls there. So really the thing I've had the most success with is hunting the edges of where like 3 different vegetations come together. Like you'll have hardwoods, planted pines, and cutover where they all 3 come together. That's been a real good spot. Rut spots, if you're in cutover country, you'll have like big cutovers, but then on the drainage ditches, they'll have to leave timber on both sides. So it makes kind of like runways between these big cutovers. And man, the bucks love to get in those things because they can cruise so fast between areas. Right. And they don't have to stay in that thicket the whole time. I've killed quite a few big deer on one property we have that has like a T-junction of those drainage ditches. And it was really good. Now, of course, our good buddy Pork Chop Miles has taken over that spot. So
you're not supposed to give your best spots to your kid, Joe.
Dude. Well, that's my wife's doing. I mean, we're it's so funny. She's actually here today in the office, and we were the guys, Cole Powell and a couple buddies and a couple guys in the office came in here at lunchtime yesterday, and they were like, "Is that Big 10 point shown back up in the swamp?" And I showed them a picture of him, and I said, "Yeah, he's back." And she overheard me say that, and she's back there in her office, and she's like, "Where's that? Does Jack know about that one? He needs to go hunt that deer." She is.
You're supposed to give everything to Jack.
Yeah, she's all team Pork Chop. She is not team Joe. That's for sure.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know. But yeah. So anything you can do in the swamps. I mean, like down there when we were looking at your property, and there was that wet weather pond that was full of water. Yeah. Those deer are going to funnel around the end of that. And that was a spot you had set up on your own that you had found. And that was literally a perfect spot. And if the hogs hadn't gotten in there, I mean, you could have killed a good deer right there with no bait at all, because they're going to
travel route.
Travel route. Absolutely. During the rut, you get in there and, at daylight and sent to 10 or 11, or if you could sit all day, you just have to, your trail cameras would tell you a little bit about when to be in there. But, that's an oxbow lakes, wet weather ponds, duck ponds that are fenced in on some of these private places, the edges, those are all things that you got to look for. And then, historic sign, you find a rub line, historic rubs that are there year after year after year with fresh rubs this year, that's a sign that those bucks are really wanting to travel through there. And then also we can get into feed trees, which is a big thing because basically we have feed in the swamp naturally from acorns and persimmons from, call it August 15th all the way to January. You've got the sawtooths first, and then you get into the cherry barks, and then you get into the persimmons, and then you get into the white oaks. And so you've got, if you find those trees, and now's a really good time to do it, is you can go into go. I mean, it's a really good time to do it. It's a little bit late to be doing it, but the good thing about looking now is you can see the fruit or see the nuts on the trees. You can take your binoculars in, and
right.
If you don't know, I've actually got an app here that I got for Jack. If you don't know trees, which a lot of guys don't, there's an app called Picture This, and it's a tree app that you literally go up to the tree,
take a photo of it,
and like scan the tree, and then it'll pop out which tree it is, and then it gives you a whole bunch of information about that tree. And so if you're in the swamps, because we get a lot, we got water chestnuts, with sawtooths, white oaks,
so much different.
Yeah, and then persimmon trees, and you walk into one, you don't even know what it is, and you may have to just write it down or put it in your notes, and when you get back to a computer, figure out when they start dropping in this part of the country. But that's a really helpful app for guys that don't know trees or need some help with trees. Heck, I keep it on my phone because sometimes these bark and leaf patterns are a little different in the swamp, and it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest, for me being fairly new, there's all the regular initial challenges. And then once you start to get your arms around basic stuff, you start to realize how much you don't know about the biology of what's around you, right? This, just like you said, you've been in the woods your whole life, but, learning which tree's which and what that's going to drop and when it's going to drop, all that stuff. They know that, like they know when that feed's coming, so they're picking that up. So if you don't know it, you're behind the 8 ball. So that's really good advice. What would you do? And I know not everybody's like this, but in a lot of situations, especially down here, you got ag bumping right up against swamps because lots of times they're sitting in the middle of farm country. And in my situation, I've got corn on both sides of the swamp. I know a number of people that I've talked to are dealing with the same thing. They'll start bringing that corn in August. How does the corn being up right now and then being brought in change the way that the deer bed and move over the course of the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, depending on what kind of shade they have out there, it can get smoldering hot out in those cornfields unless they have some ditch rows or something with some shade in it. So the bucks will bed out in that corn, and they can basically stand up and feed on that corn. And depending on how close it is to beans, they can stay out in that, and they're almost impossible to hunt. But as soon as they get that corn out, obviously there's going to be some spillage from the combines. I mean, they've gotten it so efficient now, it's not a ton of it, but there will be enough that they'll still hit those fields for a couple weeks, until that stuff rots or they clean it all up. And then they're going to gravitate, and stay, get onto the swamp foods, the acorns and that sort of stuff. But man, they will leave corn piles when the acorns start dropping. They will absolutely. I've seen it a million times. Even in Texas, I used to hunt a ranch that had a ton of live oak trees, and everything in Texas is corn pile, or corn feeder, I should say. And it was like a light switch when those live oaks started dropping. I mean, you would get 1 or 2 does an evening on a corn feeder, whereas when the oaks aren't dropping, I mean, there'd be 20 deer on every feeder when they went off in the evening. So that is a really, really, really important thing, is to not only know what trees are there that you have access to, know when they're dropping, and then which ones, because that can be frustrating, but it can be very rewarding too. Because if you've got 15 or 20 white oaks in the swamp and they're all dropping, it can be very challenging as to which one you need to hunt. But sometimes you get a perfect storm where there's only 1 or 2 that really got the moisture or sunlight or whatever it is. I'm not a biologist or treeologist, but whatever it is they needed, and maybe it's only 1 or 2 that are dropping. And then, man, I mean, it's like taking candy from a kid. I mean, they're going to come to those 2 trees and eat. And then if you're paying close attention, some of the bigger older ones will keep dropping longer. And so once they've eaten all the acorns up around the other ones, those last couple that are dropping, they'll be right in on top of those.
And so how do you find out which ones are dropping without going in there and burning that whole area up? Or do you just...
you could go in now and actually take your binoculars, and you can look up into the limbs and see the nuts that are on them. And if you get one with a lot of acorns on it, man, you can drop a camera in there, and it'll tell you. Now, when they do start dropping, like the old school ways that you would do it is you would be mobile, and with your saddle set up, you would actually figure out where these feed trees were, in March, April, and you'd maybe map them. Well, if you didn't have on X, you would use a compass and know where they were, and you would make notes of these feed trees. And then come season, when things are supposed to be dropping, you would actually walk in and go from feed tree to feed tree. And then you'd find one that had a bunch of, deer poop underneath it. You could tell it looked like hogs had been in there rooting, eating up the acorns. And man, you would climb right there and hunt. And if you were using a climber, you may leave it in there and hunt there 3 or 4 days. And a lot of, the deer are super relaxed when they're around natural food. a lot of times when they come into these bait piles, man, they are keyed up and nervous. So you got to be real careful. But on these natural food sources where they don't get hunted a lot, that they're just relaxed and they're deer being deer. And that's pretty neat, really, when you get one coming into an oak tree that you found and set up and he doesn't have a clue that you're in the world. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I actually changed a little bit this year on my setup. Like last year, I ran a saddle and I was pretty much like mobile into every different setup. But one of the things that I found out, I knew this ahead of time. I sweat like a pig. But what I found out was even when it got cool, by the time I got everything set up and got up in the tree, I had been, I had to take my jacket off. I'm soaking sweat, and then I know that, okay, yeah, I stink, obviously, so that doesn't do anything for my scent. And so this year, I've still got I actually got a ring of steps this year. Have you ever used one of those?
I haven't.
Yeah, so instead of just having a normal saddle, it's basically like it's steps that are about this big that go around, just like a nylon, just like you would use to tie up a stick or something like that, and they go all the way around the tree so you can move around the tree. And then I got a carbon set of sticks, but I set 3 lock-ons, in the areas that we kind of identified as we were scouting the property to hunt the early season, and then I've got a mobile set up so that it's something like a situation like you're talking about, where if I find something that looks hot, I can just go in there and get up on it. But those other setups, I can get in quicker. I don't have to worry about stinking and sweating. I can just get up in the tree. So I kind of took a hybrid approach the way I'm doing it this year versus last year.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I think you got to have all the tools in your arsenal. You got to have a couple mobile setups, and I'm a big preset guy, especially for rut stands. And like you say, I don't care who it is. If you're going in, say afternoon or morning, and you're walking a quarter of a mile, carrying sticks, a stand, your bow, all your clothing, and you've got to walk in and then hang that stand. You're gonna get sweat. You're gonna sweat. I mean, that's part of it. And guys that hunt these big public land pieces, that's just part of the game, and they have to do it. They have to understand their layering system and how to dress to try to minimize that. But in a perfect world, my early season stuff would be, I get camera intel the evening before, and then I get camera intel of them going back to bed in the same area. And then I go in at lunchtime, hang my stand for that hunt, and I call that quasi or semi-mobile. Then I come out of the woods at lunchtime, come back to the office, shower, and then work in the afternoon, and then go back in and hunt that evening. That would be, kind of semi-mobile. And then my rut stands, whether it be Kansas, South Carolina, Kentucky, wherever, those are preset in funnels, and I know that they're going to be, they're historically good spots. And then I will always have one mobile setup in case something, I need to pull and move or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's really important to have the ability to have the little lightweight, Lone Wolf Custom Gear mobile setup lock on stand, to have a good saddle, and then to have some presets ready to go too. So yeah, all that stacks the deck.
So you kind of alluded to it a couple of times with talking about rut stands, but what's the, if you were going to say the top 2 to 3 things that somebody should be doing right now as they prepare for the first 6 weeks of the season versus the top 2 to 3 things that people should be thinking about and preparing for their rut setups, what are those 3 things on each side, and what's the differentiation between those 3 in terms of the way people should be looking at those pieces of the season?
So I would say right now we're a little bit late. It's better to do this stuff, especially the early season stuff. It's good to have a game plan there in March, April, when the crops are going in, and what everything's going to be planted and what it's going to be around. So that would be something to do then. And then if you're in a spot where, hey, we don't open until October, like Illinois, we're in July now, is perfectly fine. So I would want to go ahead and get in and get my rut stands set. And Eric, if you want to talk about funnels, we certainly can. What to look for to identify those. I don't know. I missed that question a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I think so. Let's start with the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, and let's
Oh, yeah.
just say let's take it from the standpoint of what you just said, right? Where you can't really do what you should do in July because it's August, but let's say somebody's behind the curve, right? And they didn't really get out and do the early season stuff that they could have done. What are the things that they could do right now? As they head into the season, like let's just say best case scenario, you're late, you didn't really get done what you should have done ahead of time. What can you do to put yourself in the best situation? Let's say you're in a season opener early to mid September, which a lot of the states on the East Coast are. What could you still be doing right now?
All right, so it would first off depend on what kind of property it is. Is this a property that's got a bunch of ag and it's going to be more of an early season property, or is this a wooded draw type property that's going to be
Yeah,
more?
let's say more it's like an ag type property that you might find, in Illinois, Kentucky, potentially parts of Indiana, Ohio, that kind of way.
We'll do a hypothetical and say you've got
Yeah.
both, right?
Okay.
You've got both. So I just got this. My buddy from Kentucky calls me and said I just got a 600-acre farm. It's 250 acres of woods and it's 300 acres or 350 acres of ag. What would I do right now? Let's call it August 1st. I would hop in my truck this weekend with a bunch of cameras and I would drive all the way out there and I would blow that farm to pieces. I would walk that thing from front to back, from left to right. I would look at every single piece of that property because the deer will accept that. They will accept you going in there and blowing it up one time because you get mushroom hunters, you get arrowhead hunters, you get timber guys that come in there, you get farmers that go through there. So you can get away with it once. And what I would be looking for are those natural barriers that are terrain features that force movement. And that will be a big drainage that maybe comes off one of those hills, or it may be a big cattle fence that comes around one of the edges of the property, or it could be, if it's hill country, it could be a big bluff, with a creek or a river behind it. And I would look, you could actually e-scout some of that and see where those topo lines get really close together in certain spots. And I would want to go right there. Normally what you'll find in those areas, and that's how I identify a funnel, is you will find 2 or 3 or sometimes 4, or like my property in Kentucky, 7 different travel corridors or trails coming from different directions that all meet up right there at that bluff or right there at that terrain feature that forces all the movement together. And then they go on about their way. And normally in those areas, on the front side of that or the back side of it, is you'll find some old rubs, some old historic rubs, and some fresh rubs from the year before. If we're talking about July and August, they haven't started rubbing yet. And you'll find some old scrapes, and you could freshen some of those up. And I would go ahead, if I found that spot where there's 2, 3, 4, however many travel corridors or trails coming together right there at that point to go around that terrain feature, that's just a bulletproof funnel. And I would go ahead and try and get stands hung right now for east, west or north, south, which however it's set up, wind for those spots. I'd get a couple mock scrapes in, and I'd get a couple trail cameras in that funnel. And I would find, on a big property, you're probably only going to find 1 or 2, if you're lucky, maybe 3 spots like that. And those would be my rut funnels, because eventually on that farm, a big deer that's looking for a doe, or a doe's leading him, he's in between does, he's searching early rut for a doe, or it's the end of the rut when everything's coming out of heat, he will come through that funnel because he has to, and it's a natural way for him to travel. So that I would get. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, perfect example of that. I mean, you were so dead on. So last year, I went up and I did a week in Illinois during the rut in Southern Illinois. Family farm. It's a combination of a lot of wooded with ag, right? And there was an area in the corner of the property where it was a railroad trestle that was about 10 feet high, ran right along one side of the property. About 45-degree angle from that was a really, really big hill that had a draw right down the middle of it, and there was a large creek that fed in right between those things, and they all came together at the edge of that field that had a nice curve to it. It was kind of a place that would feel like a safe area, and they fed out of there every night, and that's where I shot that that big 6-point that I got. But they were coming in and out of there all the time, and they were chasing does from there. They were going up over that train trestle to bed at night and during the middle of the day, because there was a lot of wooded area, a lot of shade, a lot of thick bedding, and then they would come in early morning and late at night and feed into that corner of that cornfield. So you're dead freaking on right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just did a podcast earlier this morning with Bobby Worthington, who's one of the best big woods whitetail hunters on the planet, and it's mathematics is what he says, and he's kind of been a mentor of mine. And it's
math. You lost me already.
Yeah, but it's second grade arithmetic.
Maybe I can stick. I might be able to pull that one off.
Yeah, so I mean, you're taking 4 or 5 travel corridors and making them into one. So your chances go up 5-fold of a good deer coming by there when you find those spots. And you just, it's boots on the ground. You got to find them. And the sign will show you. And that's part of developing woodsmanship, is the ability to be able to find those spots and stacking the deck or putting math in your favor. So that would be the rut setup. And that's something that I would look at getting into towards the end of October through Thanksgiving, and be in there as much as I humanly possibly could. If the weather is seasonably what it should be or less than seasonably, if it's warmer, if it's 5 to 10 degrees warmer than it normally is supposed to be that time of year, that normally makes the rut movement go into the evenings or at night when it's cooler. They're still rutting. They're just doing it at night, and they're normally laying up during the day. But that would be my rut setup. And if this farm also, the season like Kentucky opens September 7th, I would be looking at the ag, and I would absolutely be, once I blew that property up, I would try and stay 2 or 3 days to glass the ag, the beans, especially the beans, glass all the bean fields, especially those low-lying pockets that you can't really see from roads and houses, because a lot of times those bigger deer will slip out into those, because that's where all the thermals end up in the evenings, or down in those low spots in those fields, and they're out of the way where they can't be seen. So I'd figure, you can even take 3 or 4 climbing sticks and climb up in a tree and set up observation sit, even, before the season starts, just so you can see as much as you can possibly see in those bean fields. And I would do that. And I would get out some cameras. I would even, if it's a bait state, man, throw you some corn out and see if you can. I mean, the object is to locate a big deer. And I think Kentucky's got something different this year, to where you can't feed until August 1st, or maybe it's even August 15th, but it's check your rules and regulations. But I'd throw a little bit of feed out if it's legal, to try and find, locate a deer. And if you put them out on the edge of the ag, and I got a picture of him on this corn pile, well, then he's feeding in that ag as well. So you can try and pinpoint him that way. So yeah, that's exactly what I would do if I all of a sudden got a magical piece of 600 acres in Kentucky. Right now they called and told me it was available to hunt. So that would be my approach.
This section of the podcast is brought to you by Ridgeline Athlete. Don't let your physical preparation hold you back from finding success this season. You can train anytime, anywhere, with a professional coach who brings decades of performance training and hunting experience to every session, and I think that is important. Ridgeline Athlete provides backcountry athletes with safe, highly effective training programs that are built for the demands of the backcountry. Use RA Do Not Go 30 to get 30% off any training program. You can find them at ridgelineathlete.com or hit up Adrian on Instagram at ridgelineathlete. And Forge at all? Have you ever looked at that?
Man, I need to. All my buddies use it, and I just have not done it. I'm pretty content and happy with OnX and have used that, but I know there's a bunch of good features on the Sport and Forage app, and I have not used it, but I probably need to.
Yeah, the one thing on there that I really like that helped me some on that piece that I've got is they've got that LiDAR where you can basically turn off everything and it just looks like the moon. But you can see every crevice, every change in, whether it's 5 feet or 4 feet, you can see every little ditch, every little nook and cranny in a terrain feature without having to sift through trees and stuff. And it really helped me when I was looking at that swamp. See what, like when you walk something, it can feel like it's pretty flat, right? Like, okay. But then when you look at that LiDAR feature, you can see, oh, okay, there's literally a travel corridor the entire length of this thing. It's not very deep. It's maybe about a 2-foot difference, and it's a very gradual slope. But then once I saw that, and then I turned the trees and everything back on, I could see, okay, there's a trail in there. And it just kind of helps you identify some things that you might miss with all the, the trees and everything on there. It's a pretty neat little, piece of the app.
Yeah, I need to do that. Maybe this will be the year. Maybe I'll get it going.
There's so much technology out there, man.
It's I know.
You can't even look at all of it. So you've got you've got a big one identified that you want to go after here the first few weeks in September.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll kill him early. He's a weird buck. I've called him the Nomad. I've known about him. This will be the 3rd year. The first year, he was borderline. I figured he was 3.5, but it's hard to get a buck in our swamp over 3.5. You'll get a 4.5 every now and again, but he made it through that year. I didn't really hunt him that first year. The second year, which was last year, I hunted the crud out of him, and he's a nomad. He's the weirdest deer, and I think that's what's kept him alive. And I threw everything at him except the amount of time I needed to give it. I would put bait out, and he might come to it once a month in the middle of the night. That wouldn't work. The early season food sources, I never did find him on anything. The rut funnels that I hunted, I didn't spend enough time there because I would go to Kansas or Kentucky or whatever it may be, and then
you're kind of a nomad too.
Yeah, a little bit.
You're always somewhere.
Yeah. That's very true. But then this year he did show back up again. I got a couple of daylight pictures of him a week ago, and then nothing. And then yesterday afternoon, right at dark, I got another picture of him. And normally they're all bachelored up this time of year. And this son of a gun, he's got one little satellite buck he's traveling with, a little cow horn that's a 1.5-year-old buck. I think just latched into him, but he kind of sticks to himself and does his own thing. And I don't think I would be able to get a crack at him early season, but I have that rut funnel that I've already got a stand in it, but I got to reset it, that I'm going to set back up. If I have the time and I can put it in from, say, that October 20th to November 10th, which is going to be tough because I've got to go to some other spots. But if I could sit there repeatedly with the right wind, I do think I would get a crack at him that time of year.
Gotcha. Well, I'm probably going to be here during that time of the year. So if you need somebody to sit there for you, all you just got to do is give me a holler. I mean, I'm glad to take care of you and help you out.
I appreciate that, man. Who needs enemies when you got friends like that?
I know, right? So where else are you going? I was actually going to ask you, are you going to stay here for the rut? Are you going to be, where else are you going to be? Where else do you have good rut setups that you like? Other states?
Definitely Kentucky. I've got a really good rut setup in Kentucky that if a big deer's anywhere in that area, I can kill him out of this one tree because it's a giant bluff. And it's just a major rut funnel, and it's 2-sided. It's got a ditch on one side, and it's got a giant bluff they can't get up and down on the other, so they have to funnel through there.
That's awesome.
I shot a 10-point in there last year, second morning. It was the actual buck that I was after, and hunted the afternoon. Well, it was the first morning. I hunted the afternoon and did not see a deer. I saw 3 coyotes, and then I killed him. He was the only deer I saw the next morning. I killed him the next morning. And what he was doing is he was coming through there looking for a first couple of does. And so it was 8:45 in the morning, and he was coming right through there, going from big block of wood to big block of woods.
Yeah.
And he was looking for the first doe, and that got him killed.
You got him early. I got that one in Illinois on my third sit. I was going to be up there for like 8 or 9 days. I was so excited about it. I was like, third sit, I shot that doe. I was like,
that's perfect.
Dadgum.
Yeah.
Come back to South Carolina, get skunked.
Yeah, this state is easy to get skunked in if you're a bow hunter. There's no doubt about that.
Well, a lot of people don't know. I mean, when I tell people, especially people, my friends from out west, that our gun season runs concurrently the entire season with our bow season, people are like, "What? That's insane." And I don't. Do you know what's the theory behind that, or what's the like? I don't. There's not another state that even sniffs that.
No, there is no theory behind it. You know, we just went to a tag system a few years ago. It used to be unlimited bucks. My dad, when he was my age, he'd kill 15 to 20 bucks in a season right here in South Carolina. And then they would limit the number of does that you could shoot. And our buck doe ratio got so far out of whack that, I mean, it at a time in a lot of areas, it was 20, 25 to 1. Yeah. 25 does to 1 buck. And now they have kind of switched it. You can still shoot $5 here. You get 3 over the counter, and then you can buy 2 more, and then you can shoot 7 or 8 does. So you can still shoot quite a few deer in the state, but they have started limiting the number of bucks. So we are catching up. But as far as the season's concerned, I have no idea why they do that. Why there is a rifle season August 15th that runs all the way to January 1st. It's bizarre to me. You know, one of the hunt clubs I hunt on, you know, when it gets good, I mean, there'll be 12 to 16 guys on 1,200 acres with high-powered rifles, and I'm trying to weave and dodge and not get shot in some of these wood lots. I mean, it makes it challenging.
Yeah, no, I know that area that I hunt, there's not a bunch of guys in there, but there's one guy that's got a stand, you know, down on the south side of the property, and luckily, the guy that farms that piece literally plants his crops up to the tree line. So you can't get a car or anything in there, and he doesn't want to walk, and he doesn't have an e-bike. So he won't get in there until probably October when, you know, all the corn's in and the enough of the stalks and stuff are down that he can drive through. But I'm the same way. Like, you're up in there, like up in a tree, and you're trying to, you know, get your buck to come through there, and all of a sudden you hear a big old rifle go off. It sounds like it's about 100 yards away from you, and you're like, dadgum, that's not even sporting, man. You're not even giving me a chance.
Yeah, it is challenging. That is for sure. We gotta avoid the water moccasins, the hogs, the rifle hunters. You know, it's a lot going on in our state. No doubt about it. Not there's anything wrong with rifle hunting. You know, I rifle hunted a lot when I was younger, and my dad and brother, they still rifle hunt, and a lot of my buddies rifle hunt. Nothing at all wrong with that. But it's just different when you're trying to bow hunt. You know.
Yeah, I was going to say, most of my friends rifle hunt too. It's just deer act different when they're getting shot at, you know, and they hear that rifle go off, and they hear enough of them go off, they start to act different. It just having a specific season that's bow season before they started getting shooting at would be nice. I mean,
it would be very nice. And I think Georgia does that, and I think North Carolina does that, and you know, those are bordering states, and I think they both offer or have seasons that come in early. I would have to verify that, but I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, you've been here forever, man. Where's your pull? Like, what's the pull? Who do we need to be lobbying at the South Carolina Assembly?
Man, I don't know. That would be a real uphill battle. I mean, if they brought a proposal that they were going to do the first 4 weeks of the season we're going to be bow only, we might get scalped and run out of the state.
The gun guys might revolt on us.
Yeah, it would be rough. That is not a hill that I'm willing to die on. That is for sure.
Well, hey, tell everybody where they can find you online, also where they can find Asio online as well.
Yeah, so Joe Miles Hunting, that's Instagram, Facebook. We got a YouTube channel. It's Mission Whitetail with Joe Miles, also podcast Mission Whitetail, and then Asio Gear, ASIO Gear, websites.com, and then all our social media handles are Asio Gear. And we are running a 30% off sale. I don't know when this podcast will air, but it goes through August 4th. And if you heard the podcast and you heard me say this, just call in and say, hey, I want the 30%, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, they can. If the sale's over too, they can use my code, which is do not go 30, and they'll get 30% off. Or no, it's actually do not go 20. So they get 20% off. It's not sale if they use my code when they buy online.
Yeah,
so
100%.
we can still get them a pretty good price.
Yeah.
I would say too that your Mission Whitetail podcast, if y'all haven't heard it, that is a great podcast when it comes to whitetail strategy. I mean, the guys that you have on there are all super seasoned guys, and I really like the way, like you said, you'll talk to Bobby Worthington, and he's a funnel guy, and I mean, y'all get knee deep in funnels for an hour, and then you'll talk to somebody else, and Rendell Erics, he'll sit there and go hang a dadgum saddle stand 6 feet 7 feet off the ground and kill something almost every time he goes out. So you talk to a lot of guys who hunt in a lot of different ways. It's a great podcast, so I appreciate the content you put out as well, Joe.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you having me, and I always look forward to our conversation. So, yeah, very, very appreciative to be included here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, brother. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. Go sell some Asio.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
See you, brother.
Talk to you soon. All right.